Princess Lyrelay stood on the bridge of her royal ship, looking out at the stars through the large window. Her purple skin glowed softly in the ship's lights, and her 4 arms moved gracefully as she checked the displays around her. She was beautiful by Zephyrian standards, with tall, elegant features and silver eyes that showed her intelligence. "Your Highness," said Captain Vex, her personal guard and ship commander, "we are approaching the border zone. Perhaps we should turn back." Lyrelay's eyes flashed with annoyance. "I am not afraid of empty space, Captain. We are here on a diplomatic mission to establish new trade routes. The Empire needs to expand." The Zephyrian Empire was powerful and advanced. Their ships could travel faster than light, and their weapons could destroy planets. For thousands of years, they had ruled over dozens of star systems. Lyrelay had been taught that her people were the most intelligent and civilized beings in the galaxy. "But, Your Highness," Vex continued, "this area has reports of human activity. Those primitive creatures are dangerous and unpredictable." Lyrelay laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing. "Humans? Those barely evolved apes? They can barely fly between their own planets. What threat could they possibly pose to us?" She had studied humans in school. Her teachers told her they were violent, stupid creatures who fought among themselves constantly. They had no real technology and lived short, meaningless lives. The Empire considered them to be just above animals in intelligence. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The bridge lights turned red, and crew members rushed to their stations. "Report!" Vex shouted. "We are picking up a distress signal," said the communications officer. "It appears to be coming from a human vessel." On the main screen, they could see a small damaged ship floating in space. It was clearly human-made, with rough metal plates and primitive-looking engines. Smoke was coming from one side, and it was spinning slowly. "They are requesting help," the officer continued. "Their life support is failing." Lyrelay felt a surge of curiosity. She had never seen real humans before, only pictures and videos in her classes. This would be a perfect chance to study them up close. "We should ignore them and continue our mission," Vex said firmly. "It could be a trap." "A trap?" Lyrelay laughed again. "From humans. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. What could they possibly do to us?" She walked closer to the screen, studying the damaged ship. "Besides, as representatives of the Empire, we should show mercy to lesser beings. It will demonstrate our superiority and kindness." Vex looked uncomfortable but nodded. "As you wish." "Your Highness, bring us alongside their ship," Lyrelay ordered. "Prepare a boarding party. I want to see these humans for myself." As their ship moved closer, Lyrelay felt excited. This would be an interesting story to tell when she returned home. She imagined the primitive humans begging for her help, amazed by her ship's advanced technology. The docking was completed quickly. Lyrelay put on her ceremonial robes, which showed her royal status, and walked to the airlock with her guards. She expected to find desperate, grateful humans waiting for rescue. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Instead of grateful humans, armed figures in combat suits rushed through the opening. They moved fast and efficiently, their weapons raised. Lyrelay was so surprised that she could not move for a moment. "Go! Go! Go!" shouted one of the humans in their rough language. The Zephyrian guards tried to react, but the humans were already inside. Energy blasts filled the corridor as both sides began fighting. Lyrelay had never seen real combat before, and the noise and flashing lights confused her. "Protect the princess!" Vex shouted, pushing Lyrelei behind a control panel. The battle was short but fierce. The humans fought with a savage intensity that shocked Lyrelei. They showed no fear, even when facing superior Zephyrian weapons. Several humans fell, but they kept fighting until the end. When the shooting stopped, most of the humans were down, but so were half of Lyralei's guards. The survivors were retreating back to their ship. "After them!" Vex ordered. But as the remaining guards chased the humans, explosions rocked both ships. The human vessel had been rigged with bombs. The blast damaged both ships and sent them spinning apart. In the chaos, Lyrelei found herself thrown against a wall. When she recovered, she realized that the artificial gravity was failing and her ship was badly damaged. "Report!" she called. "Out." "Your Highness," came a weak voice over the communication system. "We have lost main power. The engines are offline. We are caught in the gravity well of the nearby moon." Through the window, Lyrelei could see the rocky surface of a small moon growing larger as they fell toward it. Her beautiful, advanced ship was dying around her. "Can we send a distress signal?" "Negative, Your Highness. Our communications are down." Lyrelei felt fear for the first time in her life. She had always been protected, always been safe. Now she was falling toward an unknown world with no way to call for help. The ship hit the moon's surface hard. Lyrelei was thrown forward and everything went black. When she woke up, she was lying on cold metal. Her head hurt, and she could taste blood in her mouth. The ship around her was dark and silent. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. She stood up slowly, her elegant robes torn and dirty. Through a crack in the wall, she could see the alien landscape outside. The sky was a sickly yellow color, and strange plants grew between the rocks. As she looked around the wreckage of her ship, she heard a sound. Footsteps. Someone was walking through the debris toward her. A figure appeared in the doorway. It was tall and wore damaged human combat armor. The helmet was cracked, and she could see a face inside. It was definitely human, with short brown hair and blue eyes. Blood ran down one side of his face, but he was alive and standing. The human looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke in accented but understandable Zephyrian. "Well," he said, his voice tired but strong. "Looks like we're both stuck here, Princess." Lyrelei stared at him in shock. This primitive creature was speaking her language, and instead of showing proper respect for her royal status, he was looking at her like an equal. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyrelei did not know what to say. Lyrelei finally found her voice, though it shook with anger and confusion. "How dare you speak to me so casually? I am Princess Lyrelei of the Zephyrian Empire. You will show proper respect." The human removed his damaged helmet, revealing a face that was younger than she expected. Despite the blood and dirt, his blue eyes showed intelligence and something else she could not identify. He was not cowering or begging as she expected. "Name's Jake Sullivan," he said, setting his helmet down. "And right now your royal title doesn't mean much on this rock." Lyrelei's 4 arms trembled with rage. No one had ever spoken to her this way. "You ignorant creature! When my people find us, you will be executed for your disrespect." Jake looked around at the wrecked ship and laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Lady, I hate to break it to you, but nobody's coming for either of us anytime soon. My ship's gone, your ship's dead, and we're on a moon that's not on any trade routes." He walked past her toward the front of the ship, favoring his left leg. Lyrelei noticed he was hurt but still moving. She followed him, her elegant shoes clicking on the metal floor. "This is impossible," she said. My ship has the most advanced technology in the galaxy. It cannot simply stop working. Jake knelt beside a control panel and pulled off a metal plate. Inside, she could see melted circuits and burned wires. Your fancy technology doesn't like electromagnetic storms, does it? This moon's got them constantly. Fried everything electronic. Lyrelai stared at the damage. Her teachers had never told her that Zephyrian technology could fail so completely. But how do you know about our technology? Because my people study our enemies, Jake said simply. We may not be as advanced as you, but we're not stupid. The word enemies hit Lyrelai like a slap. Enemies? We are not enemies. The Empire seeks only to bring civilization to lesser species. Jake stood up and looked at her with those strange blue eyes. Is that what you call it when you take over worlds and make the people there slaves? We do no such thing. We bring order and progress. Tell that to the people of Kepler 442b, Jake said quietly. My friend Carlos was there when your ships arrived. He saw what your civilization looked like. Lyrelai wanted to argue, but something in Jake's voice made her stop. She had been taught that conquered worlds welcomed the Empire's rule. Could her teachers have been wrong? A loud crack echoed through the ship, followed by a groaning sound. Jake immediately grabbed a metal bar from the debris. What was that? Lyrelai asked. The hull's settling, and we're not alone on this moon. Jake moved toward the crack in the wall. We need to get out of here before something big decides to investigate. Get out? And go where? This moon is hostile to life. Jake looked at her expensive robes and delicate shoes. Princess, those clothes are going to get you killed out there. Don't you have anything more practical? Lyrelai realized he was right. Her ceremonial robes were beautiful, but would not protect her from the elements. She found her emergency pack and pulled out a simple jumpsuit. Jake politely turned away while she changed, which surprised her. She had been taught that humans had no sense of proper behavior. When she finished, Jake was already packing supplies from both their ships. He moved efficiently, taking only what was necessary: food, water, basic tools, medical supplies. Here, he said, handing her a small pack. Can you carry this? Lyrelai took the pack, though she had never carried anything heavier than a ceremonial scepter. Where are we going? I spotted some caves about 2 kilometers north when we were coming down. They'll give us shelter from the storms. They left the ship through the crack in the hull. Outside, the air was thin and smelled of sulfur. The yellow sky cast everything in a sickly light, and strange sounds echoed across the rocky landscape. Jake moved carefully but steadily across the uneven ground. Lyrelai struggled to keep up. Her legs were longer than his, but she had never walked on rough terrain before. Within minutes, she was breathing hard and stumbling. Wait, she called out. I need to rest. Jake stopped and looked back at her. For a moment, she thought he would mock her weakness. Instead, he came back and offered her his water bottle. Small sips, he said. We don't know how long this has to last. As they rested, Lyrelai watched Jake scan the horizon constantly. His eyes moved like a soldier's, always alert for danger. She realized that despite his youth, he was experienced in survival. How old are you? She asked suddenly. 24? You? I am 37 standard years. In Zephyrian terms, she was still young, but Jake seemed surprised. You look younger, he said. Zephyrians live much longer than humans. I am barely an adult by our standards. They continued walking. The ground became more difficult, with loose rocks that shifted under their feet. Lyrelai fell several times, scraping her hands and knees. Jake helped her up each time without comment. As they climbed a hill, Jake suddenly stopped and raised his hand. "Get down," he whispered. Lorelei dropped beside him behind some rocks. "What is it?" Jake pointed ahead. In the distance, she could see movement. Large, four-legged creatures with silver fur were moving between the rocks. They were the size of horses but moved like hunters. "Moon wolves," Jake said quietly. "I read about them in our survey reports. They hunt in packs and they're smart." "How do you know so much about this moon?" Lorelei asked. "Because humans have been exploring this system for 5 years. We don't have your fancy faster-than-light drives, so we have to study everything carefully before we go anywhere." The wolves had not seen them yet, but they were moving in their direction. Jake looked around and spotted a narrow path that led around the creatures. "Follow me exactly," he said. "Step where I step. Don't make any noise." They crept around the wolf pack, moving slowly and carefully. Lorelei's heart was beating so hard she was sure the creatures would hear it. But Jake's path was perfect. They made it past without being detected. When they reached the caves, Lorelei was exhausted. She collapsed on the rocky floor, breathing hard. Jake immediately began checking the cave for dangers and setting up a basic camp. "Rest," he said. "I'll take the first watch." "Watch for what?" "Anything that wants to eat us." As Lorelei lay in the darkness, she thought about everything that had happened. Her ship was destroyed, her guards were dead, and she was stranded with a human who treated her like an ordinary person. Worst of all, she was beginning to realize that everything she had been taught about humans might be wrong. Jake sat at the cave entrance, alert and watchful. Despite being injured and stranded, he had not complained once. He had shared his water, helped her walk, and kept them both safe from the wolves. These were not the actions of a primitive savage. "Jake," she said softly. "Yeah? Thank you." He looked back at her in surprise. "For what?" "For helping me, even though your people and mine are enemies." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Princess, I don't know about our people, but right now, we're just two beings trying to survive. That makes us allies." Lorelei closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind kept thinking about Jake's words. Could a human really be her ally? And if he could, what did that say about everything else she believed? Lorelei woke to the sound of coughing. The cave was still dark, but she could see Jake sitting by the entrance. His breathing sounded wrong, harsh, and labored. "Jake?" she called softly. He turned toward her, and even in the dim light she could see that something was very wrong. His face was pale and covered with sweat. When he tried to speak, he started coughing again. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice was weak. Lorelei stood up and moved closer. She had studied basic biology of many species, including humans. Jake's symptoms were clear signs of poison in his system. "You are not fine," she said. "The air on this moon is toxic to humans, is it not?" Jake tried to laugh, but it turned into another coughing fit. "Yeah, well, my air filter got damaged in the crash. I was hoping I could tough it out until rescue came." "But there is no rescue coming," Lorelei said, feeling fear growing in her chest. "You said so yourself." "I know." Jake leaned back against the cave wall. "Sorry, Princess. Looks like you're going to be on your own soon." Lorelei stared at him in shock. He was dying, and he was apologizing to her for the inconvenience. This was not how primitives were supposed to behave. She went to her pack and pulled out her emergency medical kit. Inside was a small breathing mask designed for Zephyrians, but it might work for Jake too. There were also medicine injections that could help fight poison, But as she held the supplies, she hesitated. These were her only medical supplies. If she used them on Jake and something happened to her later, she would have nothing. The smart thing would be to save them for herself. She looked at Jake, who was trying to stay alert despite his condition. Even now, he was watching the cave entrance, ready to protect them both if danger came. "Here," she said, kneeling beside him with the breathing mask. "This might help." Jake pushed her hand away weakly. "Save it for yourself. You're going to need it." "Do not argue with me," Lyralay said firmly. "I am a princess, and I command you to let me help you." Despite his condition, Jake smiled. "That's the first time you've pulled rank for something good." She helped him put on the breathing mask. It was designed for a different face shape, but Jake managed to make it work. Almost immediately, his breathing became easier. Next, she prepared one of the medicine injections. The label was in Zephyrian, but she knew it was designed to help the body fight toxins. "I do not know if this will work on human biology," she admitted. "At this point, it's worth trying," Jake said. She gave him the injection. Jake winced, but did not complain. Within minutes, some color returned to his face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Do not thank me yet. I may have just killed you faster." But the medicine seemed to be working. Jake's breathing improved, and he was able to sit up straighter. Lyralay felt relief she did not expect. "Why did you do that?" Jake asked. "Those were your supplies." Lyralay was not sure how to answer. She had been taught that her life was more valuable than others because of her royal blood. But sitting in this cave watching Jake suffer, those teachings seemed empty. "I do not know," she said honestly. Over the next few hours, Jake slowly recovered. As he got better, he began telling Lyralay stories about his life. He talked about his sister Amy, who was a doctor. "She works in refugee camps," Jake explained. "Places where people go when wars destroy their homes. She does not get paid much, but she says helping people is more important than money." "Why would she work for free?" Lyralay asked. "In Zephyrian society, everyone worked for personal advancement. Because it is the right thing to do," Jake said simply. He told her about his friend Carlos, who had died defending a human colony from pirates. "Carlos was not even from that world," Jake said. "But when the attack came, he fought alongside the colonists. He said all people deserved protection no matter where they came from." These stories confused Lyralay. In the Empire, people served their own interests first. The idea of dying for strangers was seen as foolish. "Do all humans act this way?" she asked. "Not all," Jake admitted. "We have selfish people too, and criminals and cowards, but most of us try to do what is right. Even when it costs you, especially then. Anyone can do good when it is easy. It only means something when it is hard." Lyralay thought about her own life. She had never been asked to sacrifice anything. Her every wish had been granted, her every need met. She had never been tested. "Tell me about your world," Jake said. "What is it like being a princess?" Lyralay described her home planet, with its crystal cities and floating gardens. She talked about the palace where she lived, with servants to meet her every need. But as she spoke, she realized how empty it all sounded. "Do you have friends?" Jake asked. The question surprised her. "I have companions, other nobles who attend court functions with me." "But do you have anyone you can really talk to?" "Anyone who knows the real you." Lyralay was quiet for a long time. The truth was, she had always been alone. People treated her with respect because of her title, not because they cared about her as a person. "No," she said finally. "I do not think I do." Jake looked sad when she said that. "That sounds lonely." "It is what I was born to," Lyra said, but even as she spoke, she realized she did not like it. They were interrupted by a sound from outside the cave. Jake immediately became alert, despite still being weak from the poisoning. "What is that?" Lyra whispered. Jake listened carefully. "Sounds like the moon wolves. They have found our scent." Through the cave entrance, they could see shadows moving in the yellow light outside. The wolves had surrounded the cave. Their silver forms moved back and forth, testing for a way in. "How many?" Lyra asked. "At least 6, maybe more." Jake stood up slowly, still wearing her breathing mask. He picked up a metal bar from their supplies and moved toward the entrance. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked in alarm. "They're not going to go away on their own, and they're smart enough to wait us out." "But you are still sick. You cannot fight them all." Jake looked back at her with those steady blue eyes. "Princess, I am not going to let them hurt you. That is not who I am." Lyra felt something strange in her chest. This human who owed her nothing was willing to die protecting her, not because she was royalty, but because it was the right thing to do. "Wait," she said. She went to her pack and pulled out a small device. It was an emergency flare designed to signal for help. "If I set this off outside the cave, it will create bright light and loud noise," she said. "It might scare them away." "Or it might make them attack faster," Jake pointed out. "Then we face that together." Jake looked surprised. "Princess, you do not have to—" "Yes, I do," Lyra said firmly. "You saved my life by sharing your knowledge. You protected me from dangers I did not even see. Now it is my turn to help you." She activated the flare and threw it out of the cave. It exploded in brilliant white light, brighter than the sun. The wolves howled and scattered, their sensitive eyes hurt by the sudden brightness. When the light faded, the wolves were gone. Jake and Lyra sat back down, both breathing hard, from fear and excitement. "Thank you," Jake said. "We are a team now," Lyra replied. "Teams help each other." As they settled in for the night, Lyra realized that something inside her had changed. For the first time in her life, she had chosen to help someone else, even when it put her at risk, and it felt better than any privilege her royal birth had ever given her. 3 days later, Lyra was gathering water from a small stream when she heard the sound that changed everything. The deep hum of Zephyrian engines filled the air above them. "Jake!" she called, running back to the cave. "My people are here!" Jake looked up at the sky where 3 large Zephyrian warships were descending toward the moon's surface. His face was calm, but Lyra could see the worry in his eyes. "So this is where we say goodbye," he said quietly. Lyra felt a strange pain in her chest. She had not expected to feel sad about leaving Jake. "They will want to question you," she said. "I can tell them you helped me survive. Perhaps they will be merciful." Jake gave her a look that was both sad and knowing. "Princess, we both know how this ends. Your people do not show mercy to humans." Before Lyra could respond, the ships landed nearby with thunderous roars. Armed Zephyrian soldiers poured out, their weapons ready. Leading them was a tall figure in golden armor that Lyra recognized immediately. "Commander Thane," she whispered. Thane was her betrothed, chosen by her father to strengthen political alliances. He was handsome by Zephyrian standards, ambitious, and completely loyal to the Empire's beliefs about species superiority. "Stay behind me," Jake said, standing in front of Lyralai with his metal bar ready. "No," Lyrali said firmly. "This is my responsibility." She walked out of the cave with her hands raised, showing that she was not armed. The soldiers immediately surrounded her, but they kept their weapons pointed at Jake. "Your Highness!" Thane called out, his voice filled with relief and anger. "Thank the Empire you are alive. When we found the wreckage of your ship—" He stopped speaking when he saw Jake emerge from the cave behind her. Thane's expression changed from relief to disgust. "What is that creature doing alive?" Thane demanded. "His name is Jake Sullivan," Lyralai said carefully. "He helped me survive on this moon." Thane's golden eyes narrowed. "It helped you, Princess? You have been through a terrible experience. This savage probably threatened you, forced you to work with it." "No," Lyralai said firmly. "He saved my life multiple times. He shared his supplies, protected me from dangerous animals, and taught me how to survive." The soldiers looked confused. Thane's face showed disbelief and growing anger. "Princess, you are not thinking clearly. Humans are primitive beasts. They cannot help anyone. This creature was probably planning to sell you to human slavers." Jake stepped forward, and immediately a dozen weapons pointed at him, but he ignored them and spoke directly to Thane in perfect Zephyrian. "I had many chances to harm the princess," Jake said calmly. "Instead, I chose to protect her. Judge me by my actions, not by your prejudices." Thane's face turned dark purple with rage. "It dares to speak, and in our sacred language." He turned to his soldiers. "Kill it immediately." "No!" Lyralai stepped between Jake and the soldiers. "I forbid it." "You forbid it?" Thane asked, his voice dangerous. "Princess, you forget yourself. This creature is nothing more than a dangerous animal." "He is not an animal," Lyralai said, her voice growing stronger. "He is intelligent, brave, and honorable. More honorable than many Zephyrians I know." The soldiers looked shocked at her words. No one in the Empire ever said anything good about other species, especially humans. Thane grabbed Lyralai's arm roughly. "You have been poisoned by this creature's influence. Do not worry. We will cure you of these strange thoughts." "Let go of me," Lyralai said coldly. "I am still a princess of the Empire." Thane released her arm, but moved closer, speaking in a low voice. "Lyralai, think carefully about what you are saying. Your father sent me to find you and bring you home safely. If I report that you have been contaminated by human influence, it will not go well for you." Lyralai looked at Thane's handsome face and saw something she had never noticed before. His eyes were cold and calculating. He did not care about her, as a person, only as a political prize. "Take the human aboard my ship," Thane ordered his soldiers. "We will interrogate it properly before execution." As the soldiers moved toward Jake, Lyralai made a decision that surprised even her. She activated her personal shield generator, creating a glowing barrier around both herself and Jake. "I said no," she declared. "Jake Sullivan is under my protection." The soldiers stopped, confused. They could not attack through a royal shield without direct orders from someone of higher rank than Lyralai. Thane's face was now completely purple with rage. "Lyralai, you are making a terrible mistake. Lower your shield immediately." "I will not," she said firmly. "Jake has done nothing wrong. He saved the life of a Zephyrian princess. That should be rewarded, not punished." "It is a human." Thane shouted, "They are our enemies. They are trying to steal our territory and challenge our rightful place as rulers of this galaxy. Maybe, Lara Lee said quietly. We are not meant to be rulers over other intelligent beings. The words fell like stones into water. Every soldier present stared at her in shock. No one in the Empire ever questioned their right to rule. Thane's voice became very quiet and very dangerous. Princess, you will lower your shield and come with me now. We will discuss your illness in private. Lara Lee looked at Jake, who was standing calmly beside her despite being surrounded by enemies. He was not afraid even though he knew he was probably going to die. His courage gave her strength. Jake, she said quietly, do you remember the emergency beacon you helped me repair yesterday? Jake's eyes widened slightly. They had indeed found a small beacon in the wreckage of her ship. Jake had helped her fix it, though they had not activated it because they knew it would bring Zephyrian ships. I remember, Jake said carefully. The beacon has star charts in its memory, Lara Lee continued, speaking as if she was just making conversation. Charts that show safe routes to human territory. Jake understood immediately. She was giving him information he could use to escape. Thane also understood. His face became murderous. Guards, prepare to overload her shield. We cannot allow this. Human to escape with that information. The soldiers raised their weapons and began charging them for a combined blast that would overwhelm Lirelai's shield. But doing so would likely kill both her and Jake. You would kill me to stop him? Lara Lee asked in disbelief. If necessary, Thane said coldly. Your contamination cannot be allowed to spread. In that moment, Lara Lee saw the truth about the Empire. She had been raised to serve. They valued power more than life, control more than justice. Even her own life meant nothing if it threatened their beliefs. She looked at Jake one more time. I am sorry, she said. I should have seen the truth sooner. You see it now, Jake replied. That is what matters. Lara Lee made her choice. She dropped her shield and immediately threw herself at the nearest soldier, grabbing his weapon. Jake moved at the same time, using the confusion to fight his way toward the landed ships. The cave area erupted in chaos. Lara Lee fought with a desperation she had never felt before, not for her own life, but for Jake's chance to escape. She was not trained in combat, but her royal status had required her to learn basic fighting skills. Jake was a much better fighter. He moved through the soldiers like a force of nature, using their own weapons against them. But there were two, many of them, and they were surrounding him. The ship! Lara Lee shouted, pointing to the smallest Zephyrian vessel. The shuttle! Jake saw what she meant. The shuttle was designed for quick trips and had the simplest security. If he could reach it, he might be able to escape. He fought his way toward the ship while Lara Lee continued to distract the soldiers. She knew she was probably destroying her life, her title, everything she had ever known. But watching Jake risk everything to protect her had taught her something important. Some things were worth more than comfort and safety. Jake reached the shuttle and managed to get inside. Lara Lee heard the engine starting up just as Thane himself grabbed her and pressed a weapon to her head. "Stop the human or I kill the princess!" Thane shouted. The shuttle lifted off, but then stopped hovering above them. Through the cockpit window, Lara Lee could see Jake's face. He was going to come back for her. "Go!" she shouted up at him. "Go now! Do not let this be for nothing!" For a long moment, Jake hesitated. Then the shuttle's engines roared to life, and it shot up into the sky, disappearing among the stars. Thane threw Lara Lee to the ground roughly. "You have betrayed everything you were born to be," he said with disgust. Lara Lee stood up slowly, her clothes torn and dirty from the fight. She looked up at the sky where Jake had disappeared and felt something she had never experienced before. She had chosen to do what was right instead of what was easy. "No," she said quietly. "I have finally learned what I was born to be." Thane ordered her to be taken aboard his ship as a prisoner. As they dragged her away, Lorelei smiled. Jake was free, and he carried with him the knowledge that not all Zephyrians were enemies. Maybe that would be enough to start something better between their peoples. She had lost her title, her comfortable life, and probably her freedom. But she had gained something more valuable. She had learned who she really was when everything else was stripped away. 6 months later, Lorelei stood in chains before the High Council of the Zephyrian Empire. The great chamber was filled with the most powerful nobles in the galaxy, all sitting in judgment of her actions. She no longer looked like a princess. Her royal robes had been replaced with simple prisoner clothes. Her 4 arms were bound in energy restraints, and her silver eyes showed the weariness of months in captivity. "Princess Lorelei of House Zephyr," announced the chief judge, "you stand accused of treason against the Empire, aiding enemy forces, and spreading dangerous ideas about lesser species. How do you answer these charges?" Lorelei stood straight and looked directly at the council. "I am guilty of helping someone who saved my life," she said clearly. "If that is treason, then I am proud to be a traitor." Angry murmurs filled the chamber. Several nobles called for her immediate execution. The chief judge raised his hand for silence. "During your time in captivity, you have been offered many chances to recant your statements about the human creature. You have refused each time. Why?" "Because they are true," Lorelei replied. "Jake Sullivan showed me that humans are not the savage beasts we pretend they are. They are intelligent, honorable, and capable of great sacrifice for others. We have been wrong about them." "Impossible," shouted Lord Vexar from his seat. "Humans are primitive animals. They barely understand technology." "Then how did one human escape from an entire squadron of our best soldiers?" Lorelei asked calmly. The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered the embarrassing report of how Jake had stolen a Zephyrian shuttle and escaped into space. It was a humiliation the military did not like to discuss. Commander Thane stood up from his seat. "Your Highness," he said with false politeness, "the human clearly used some kind of mind control on you. It is the only explanation for your confusion." Lorelei looked at Thane with disgust. In the months since her capture, she had learned more about his true nature. He had used her absence to try to claim her inheritance and position. "There was no mind control," she said. "I simply learned to see clearly for the first time in my life." The chief judge leaned forward. "Princess, your father still lives. If you will publicly state that the human corrupted your mind and return to your proper place, he is willing to forgive this episode." For a moment, Lorelei felt tempted. She could have her old life back, her comfort, her safety. All she had to do was lie about Jake and betray everything she had learned. "No," she said firmly. "I will not lie to save myself." The chief judge sighed. "Then you leave us no choice. Princess Lorelei, you are hereby stripped of your title and sentenced to exile. You will be taken to the frontier worlds and left to survive as you can." As the guards moved to take her away, alarms suddenly began ringing throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed, and a communications officer rushed in. "Your Honors!" the officer called out. "Human ships are approaching the capital. They carry diplomatic flags." The nobles erupted in panic and anger. Human ships had never come to the heart of the Empire before. "How many ships?" demanded the chief judge. 3 vessels, Your Honor. They are requesting permission to land and speak with the council. Lord Vexar stood up, his face purple with rage. This is an invasion. Destroy them immediately. Wait, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. It was Elder Corvus, the oldest member of the council. They carry diplomatic flags. If we attack them without cause, it will make us look like the savages. The chief judge considered this. Allow 1 ship to land, he decided, but keep weapons trained on them. 20 minutes later, the great doors of the chamber opened. Human soldiers in clean uniforms walked in, escorting a group of diplomats. Leading them was a figure in a formal suit who looked familiar to Lyrelay. It was Jake. He looked different than he had on the moon. His hair was neatly cut, his uniform was perfectly pressed, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone representing his entire species. But his blue eyes were the same, and when he saw Lyrelay in chains, she saw anger flash across his face. "Honored Council," Jake said in perfect Zephyrian, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I am Commander Jake Sullivan of the Human Federation. We come in peace to discuss relations between our peoples." The nobles stared in shock. This was not the primitive savage they had been taught to expect. Jake spoke with the Polish of a trained diplomat and showed no fear despite being surrounded by enemies. "Impossible," whispered Thane. "That is the same creature that escaped from us. It cannot be a commander." Jake heard him and turned to look directly at Thane. "Commander Thane, I believe? I must thank you for the shuttle. It was very helpful. In returning to my people." Several nobles gasped at Jake's casual insult. Thane's face turned dark with rage. The chief judge regained his composure. "Human, you are not welcome here. Leave immediately or face the consequences." "I think not," Jake said calmly. He gestured to his escort, and one of them handed him a datapad. "You see, we have been monitoring your communications for months. We know about Princess Lyrelay's trial." He looked directly at Lyrelay, and she saw respect and concern in his eyes. "The human known as Jake Sullivan," he continued, "was saved by a member of your royal family. According to your own laws, this creates a debt of honor. We have come to discharge that debt." Elder Corvus leaned forward with interest. "What do you propose?" "A prisoner exchange," Jake said. "We have captured several Zephyrian pirates who have been raiding our trade routes. We will return them in exchange for Princess Lyrelay." "She is a traitor," Thane shouted. "We do not negotiate for traitors." "She is someone who chose to save a life instead of letting prejudice decide her actions," Jake replied firmly. "That makes her the most honorable person in this room." The chamber erupted in angry voices, but Elder Corvus raised his hand for silence. "Human Commander," the elder said thoughtfully, "why do you value this one Zephyrian so highly? Surely your people have no love for the Empire." Jake was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because Princess Lyrelay showed me that not all Zephyrians are our enemies. She taught me that even in the heart of the Empire, there are people who can choose to do what is right." He paused and looked around the chamber. "My people want peace," he continued. "But we will defend ourselves if attacked. However, if there are Zephyrians who believe in justice and cooperation instead of conquest, we would rather work with them than fight against them." Elder Corvus studied Jake carefully. "And you believe Princess Lyrelay is such a person?" "I know she is," Jake said without hesitation. She gave up everything she had to save my life. That kind of courage is rare in any species. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to reject the human offer and execute Lyralai as planned. Others were curious about this chance for peace talks. Finally, Elder Corvus spoke for the council. "We will agree to this exchange," he announced. "But know this, human. If your people break faith with us, there will be consequences." Jake nodded, respectfully. "Understood, Elder. We ask only for the chance to prove that cooperation serves everyone better than conquest." As the guards removed Lyralai's chains, Jake approached her. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I am now," she replied. "But Jake, I am no longer a princess. I have nothing to offer your people." Jake smiled, the same warm expression she remembered from the cave. "Lyralai, you have something more valuable than any title. You have the courage to stand up for what is right. My people need voices like yours." As they left the chamber together, Lyralai felt something she had never experienced before. Hope for the future. 6 months later, Lyralai stood in the observation deck of a human space station, watching ships from both species working together to build a new trade outpost. She wore the simple uniform of a cultural liaison, a job she had taken to help bridge the gap between humans and Zephyrians. Jake joined her at the window, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a human drink she had learned to enjoy. The council voted to approve 3 more joint projects, he reported. "Your reports about human capabilities have been very influential." Lyralai accepted the coffee gratefully. "There is still much resistance on both sides," she said. "Many of my people still believe humans are inferior, and many humans still see all Zephyrians as enemies," Jake admitted. "But we are making progress. 1 person at a time, 1 project at a time." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the ships work side by side in space. Lyralai thought about how much her life had changed since that day on the moon. She had lost her title, her wealth, and her comfortable life. But she had gained something far more valuable, a purpose that mattered, and friends who valued her for who she was, not what she had been born to be. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked quietly. "Giving up your old life?" Lyralai looked at him, this human who had taught her what real honor meant. "Never," she said firmly. "I finally learned what I was meant to be, not a princess ruling over others, but a person working with others to build something better." Outside the window, a new ship arrived carrying diplomats from 3 different species, all coming to learn about the cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. The future was uncertain, but it was full of possibilities that neither species could achieve alone. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that Lyralai had learned in a cave on a hostile moon. When people choose to see each other as allies,